Hey guys, today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my experience with advanced parole. As you may already know, of course, I have Daca. So I traveled with advanced parole about a month ago, and I would like to make this video to share with you guys my experience and hopefully help you guys build some courage to apply for it if you're thinking about it. I have my notes here, so if I look down, that's probably what I'm looking at. So my cat is in the background playing. You can hear some bells. I first want to start off by saying that I am not a lawyer or anything like that, so please don't come at me. I also want to give a huge thanks to Dreamers Together. I found them on Facebook and they're absolutely amazing. They have some very amazing dedicated volunteers, some amazing guides. They will answer your questions on there in regards to renewing your work permit or applying for advanced parole. They're just super amazing and you can find everything that you need on there. So if you're not part of that group yet, or someone you know who's trying to apply for advanced parole isn't part of the group yet, I highly recommend that you go join that group, because thanks to them I was able to do this all by myself. And if you're scared, of course nervous about applying, they also offer consultations. To book a consultation with them, they'll go over everything with you and they will help you. So definitely look into that if that's something that sounds you feel more comfortable with. I did this all on my own, following their guides and asking some questions in the group. So si se puede. You don't need to hire a lawyer. That's going to be a lot more money. So just, don't be scared. It's okay to be scared, but don't be scared. Let's start off by explaining what is advanced parole. Advanced parole is a travel document issued by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, that allows certain immigrants to travel outside of the country and return lawfully. So who can apply for advanced parole? I read this on a website that I'm going to put right here. For this purpose of this video, I'm just going to say, for people who are Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is Daca recipients, we are eligible to apply for advanced parole under one of the three categories, which are humanitarian, educational, and work purposes. There's a little bit more to it, but I'm just going to leave it at that because we are talking about Daca. So in order to apply for advanced parole, you first and foremost need to have a passport issued by your birth country. You need to have a reason to apply for advanced parole. And of course, you need to wait until you actually get that approval notice of advanced parole in the mail before you leave the United States. So these are some reasons listed on the website. However, every case is different, so you will have to do your own research with your case, of course. I will be sharing my case, but I don't want it to be taken as like a copy and paste because, like I said, everything is different. You may be required to submit different paperwork and stuff, so just keep that in mind, that you will have to dig deeper into your research into what you need to provide them. Like I had mentioned, I did this whole process on my own, following the guidelines on Dreamers Together group. So my reason to apply for advanced parole was to visit a sick relative and a grave visit. Now this may be a little bit confusing. So I did visit my sick relative was my maternal grandmother, and my grave visit was my paternal grandmother. They are saying that in order for you to do a grave visit, this specific relative had to have passed away less than 2 years ago. 2 years ago or less. It can't be more than 2 years ago because they will deny you unless you add it with a different reasoning. Like me, I added the sick relative and the grave visit. However, in my case, my paternal grandmother had passed away almost 2 years ago, not quite yet, but I was scared that they would deny me, so I added my sick relative as another reason, making it 2 reasons. So there is a list of documents that you need to provide. In my case, for visiting a sick relative and a grave visit, I did need to provide my birth certificate, my mom's birth certificate, my maternal grandma's birth certificate, and for her being the sick relative, I had to provide a doctor's letter. And all of these birth certificates and doctor's letters had to be translated into English. I did them on my own. Also, Dreamers Together does offer some translation services, or you can use Google. So don't be afraid. For my grave visit, which was my paternal grandmother, again, my birth certificate, just one. My dad's birth certificate, my grandma's birth certificate, and her death certificate, all translated. So that's all I had to provide for my reasonings, besides like actually filling out the paperwork and the payment and stuff. So it took me a while to get all my stuff together because I was very scared of like messing up. I got my AP packet ready to be mailed, and I mailed it out on February 28th of 2024. And then I got a text message by the USCIS that my case was received on March 4th, 2024, so just a couple days later. I got a notice that my biometrics were going to be reused on March 12th of 2024. They reused mine. Some cases they don't get reused and they send you somewhere to get them done. And then I actually got my approval notice on June 6th, 2020. I have actually been using this app called Case Tracker. It looks like this, and this is where I was able to track my case. Honestly, it didn't give you very much details. I'll put a picture up here. For that case tracker, I was able to receive my approval notice, which was on June 6, 2024. So it took roughly around 3 months for me to get my case approved. And then I received my actual approval notice in the mail, the paper one that you need. I received that on June 10th, 2024. So just a couple days after I got my notice on the phone. So once I received my notice in the mail, it's going to look something like this. I'm not going to completely show you guys just because, again, this is very personal information, but it's going to look something like this. A green paper, and it's going to have like red letters here. So I was approved from, mind you, again, I received my approval notice on June 6th, and they approved me for 3 months, starting June 5th of 2024 until, well, I had to return on or before September 13th of 2024, which, if you already don't know this, of course you don't want to wait till the last day. It is very recommended that you return at least a week before your last day on here, just because, you know, anything can happen. I didn't end up traveling for the full 3 months, unfortunately. I only went to Mexico for 2.5 weeks. And I went with my brothers, and then from Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, we traveled with Volaris to Mexico City Airport, Benito Juarez, I think. We flew with Volaris. Everything was smooth leaving the country, of course. At the airport, you obviously have to provide them with your passport when you're leaving. And then what I took with me was, of course, my passport, my paper, and I took my EAD card, my work permit card, just in case. None of that was asked for upon leaving the United States, just my passport. So once I got to Mexico, I remember getting off the plane, and there was 2 lines, one for like the extranjeros and then for Mexican citizens. So obviously I went through that line because I was a Mexican citizen. They stamped my passport, and then we left. So I was again there in Mexico for about 2.5 weeks. And then when I left, I was already familiar with the process because I read a lot of stories on that Facebook group of people and some advice that they gave out. We cannot check in for our flight when we flying out of Mexico, and we have to check in person. So I went to the airport pretty early because I was afraid of missing my flight. I went to the Volaris like booth, Volaris area, and I went to where it said international check-in. Once I got there, there was 2 lines, and there was an employee standing there. Once you got close, she would ask you like what you needed help with, and I explained to her that I needed to check in for my flight because I was traveling with advanced parole. And she told me, okay, go wait in this line. So I got into the line to check in person for my flight back home. Once I got in the line and it was my turn, I went up to the lady, the employee, I should say, I don't know. And, you know, I told her, I was like, hi, I'm obviously in Spanish. I said, I want to check in for my flight. I'm flying with advanced parole. And she was really confused. And this really threw me off. So before I checked in, I had read other people's stories on the group that had flown with Volaris, because of course I wanted to like know other people's experiences so I could like be ready and know what to expect. However, I know that it was going to be different for me or everyone because it's always different, it's never the same thing. And a lot of people said that they flew with Volaris, and Volaris was very familiar with AP, so they had like no issues with it. So I came in knowing, like, I came into the airport under that impression that Volaris was familiar with AP. So once I got to the desk lady, you know, I told her I need to check in for my flight. I let her know that I was flying with AP, so I gave her my passport, I gave her the advanced parole paper, and she seemed very, very confused. She didn't know what I was talking about. She asked me a lot of things about the paper, and I explained to her, and she was still like, I don't know. So she ended up leaving and talking to a different coworker, and that coworker then came over to me and he told me that he was going to take pictures of me to send them to CBP, so Customs and Border Protection. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine, you know. So after about 15 minutes, he comes back to her and he lets her know that she's good to check me in and to provide me my boarding pass. So I'm guessing they had to confirm with Border Protection that I was actually approved to return to the United States. But then she checked me in, she gave me my boarding pass, and I do remember her giving me a small piece of paper that had like red letters on it. I couldn't read what the red letters were, but she told me I needed to fill it out and give it to someone before I boarded the plane. So you know, I finally check in, go to my gate with my brothers, and that's when I kept hearing, it's kind of hard to know what they're saying because it's so crowded at the airport, but I kept hearing the lady on the intercom say something about if you have this paper with red lettering, you have to like fill it out and give it to them. And I was very confused. Like, I low-key was not going to fill it out, but I ended up filling it out. And if I remember correctly, it would just ask you for your name, what you're traveling with, like a visa, and then ask you for like your passport number. I can't remember if it asked you where you were going and stuff, but I just filled out like the most basic part. I didn't give additional details. I'm not sure if that's something that's gonna come bite me in the butt later. But then I filled it out, and once I was boarding the plane, there was someone at the gate waiting for it, so I gave it to them, and then I got on the plane. Alright, so I'm on the plane. I fly from Mexico City to Las Vegas, Harry Reid, and upon my arrival, you go through, you know, Border Protection Customs. So there's two lines. There's a US citizen line and like the visitors line. In my case, I've heard a lot of people say they can go to either or. Because I was traveling with my brothers, I was able to go through the US citizen line, which was much shorter and much quicker than the other line was. So my brother let me go through first, and then the officer called me over. I was like super scared, but the officer called me over and I gave him my passport and I gave him my advanced parole paper. And I said, hi, I'm traveling with advanced parole. And he just took my documents. He's like, okay, great. Like, I'm going to hold on to these. I'm going to take a picture of you and get your fingerprints. So he took a picture of me. He got my fingerprints. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to have you stand under that sign and someone will come out and get you. So I was like, okay. I stood over under that sign for about 5 minutes before another officer came out. She grabbed my passport and AP paper from the previous officer, and she called my name, and I was like, that's me. And so then that female officer took me into the famous cuartito. In the cuartito, there was about maybe like 4 other people in there. I went in there, I just sat down and waited for my name to be called. I believe I waited for around 10 minutes. When they finally called my name, I went up to the officer. The officer asked me, did you bring any food? To which I replied no, because I didn't bring any food. He then handed me back my documents, which was again my passport and my AP paper. And he said, have a good day. Then I left the cuartito. I met up with my siblings at the carousel where you pick up your bags. And I was so relieved because the process, everything went so smooth. You know, there's people that say they have a bad experience, which is, like I said, it is possible to have a very poor experience because it is different for everyone. I'm just grateful that in my case, everything went smooth. In my case, if anything, I think it was much more complicated to leave Mexico than it was to return to the US. So I'm very grateful, you know, that everything went well for me. Another thing I want to point out is that when I also read stories and did my research, people did say that if you had a one entry AP, which in my case I had a one entry only, they don't return this paper to you. They returned it to me, and that caught me off guard because usually the officers will keep this paper. But they returned it to me, and according to some people on there, it is normal for some officers to do that because they already, you know, took your information down and they stamped it. So mine does say stamped here. I was paroled. So now I have my legal entry. And in my case, I can now go ahead and take another step to adjustment of status. So anyways, I did get my paper back. If you get your paper back, that is great. If you had one entry, you know, don't be too alarmed. If you have multiple entries, they must give you your paper back because this is where they're gonna keep stamping if you have multiple entries. I hope that my experience is somewhat helpful to you guys and gives you a little bit more motivation to apply for advanced parole. With the new elections coming up, we are unsure of what's going to happen. So if you have the opportunity to do it now, I would do it now before it's too late. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. Again, please refer to this group as it's very helpful and it helped me a lot, and I feel like I am very confident that it will help you as well.